I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm especially grateful to Numina and Numina because it is so great to have a publisher who is supportive of authors. Because being an author of a novel is a little weird thing. I'm going to tell you two little quick stories. So when my first book came out, Soma, about Suffolk Market, about a week or so after the book premiered, and you're very excited because you work on books for years sometimes before they come out. Went to a dinner party for somebody's birthday unrelated to my book, and I'm sitting there and meet this woman for the first time, and she basically says that somebody introduces me and says, well, Scott just had a book come out, and describes the book, and the woman says, I picked that book up in the bookstore yesterday. I picked it up and I looked at it and I put it down. And I had to sit with that woman for the next 2 hours, and she explained that it just wasn't for her. But then, a couple weeks ago, I had an experience that was quite different. I was at the Midnight Sun. Does anyone know that bar? Oh, yeah. And some guy comes up who I know, and he has a friend with him who I did not know, and he says to his friend, hey, that's that guy. He points at me. So that's that guy who wrote that book. So this guy this other guy I did not know had read my novel, Soma, and I guess he liked it quite a bit, and he was all excited to meet me because the book really meant something to him. So he said that after he finished the book, he was so impressed with it, and it meant so much to him, that he sent it to a buddy of his who was serving on the front lines in the war in Iraq. And so that's where my book went, just totally coincidentally. Like, for a moment there, I'm sitting there saying, so this is kind of like I was entertaining the troops at the front of the war. I'm like Bob Hope. Which really explains why that war went so incredibly well. Now tonight I'm going to read a little bit from The Sower, which is my latest book. This is the one published by Numina, and I hope you stick around afterwards. All of the authors have their books for sale in the back. For tonight only, you'll be able to get the book for $10. So that's a tribute to Yanina's support, and I hope that you'll support us in return. So the premise of the book is, as Evan pointed out, is a guy who has the cure for all diseases, and the only way to pass it on is through sex. Part of the conflict, though, of the book is that the guy is gay. And at some point in this book, he's going to have to cure a woman who needs to get this cure. So that's a bit of a problem for him, and the scene I'm going to read right now helps explain a little bit why it is a problem for him. His name is Bill. Sitting in his SUV in the company parking lot, I don't know my glasses. Sitting in his SUV in the company parking lot, Bill kept the engine idling. He shoveled papers on the passenger seat and rifled through items in the glove compartment. It was all an act to kill time. Dorothy was staked out by the front door, as she often was first thing in the morning, chain smoking. She said she needed to store up on nicotine before she could start work. It seemed more like an excuse to corner Bill as he tried to head up to his office. She always refused to let him pass. Dorothy's smoking reminded Bill of his mother. When he was a child, Mom loved to talk on the kitchen phone for hours. It was the wall-mounted type with a cord and the receiver that only stretched 6 feet. So Mom would yell for Bill to come into the kitchen, hand him one of her Pall Malls, then tell him to go across the room and light it for her off the burner on the gas stove. He remembered dreading the chore. He usually inhaled the smoke, causing him to choke. Don't be such a frickin' little girl, Mom would berate. It didn't matter that Bill was only 5. Bill hated being around smokers ever since, but that wasn't the main reason he avoided Dorothy. Nearly 50 years old and 50 pounds overweight, she looked like a slightly heavier, pre-makeover version of that amateur British singing sensation Susan Boyle, the ugly woman who surprised and delighted the world with her angelic voice. But with Dorothy, there was no such charm. Instead, she flirted relentlessly with Bill. She was so explicit and aggressive, it was like a contact sport. Her latest tactic was to share sexually graphic anecdotes. Did she think this would turn him on? Instead, her tales made Bill wonder how anyone could ever have sex with a woman. Poor Dorothy, she had no idea that Bill was gay. He'd never come out at work. Not that he was ashamed, but he always figured that in the world of oil-rig roughnecks, he'd be asking for trouble. So he'd kept his personal life private. He'd managed bigger secrets for so long, it wasn't a big deal. Of course, that was before he met Ike. Ike, by the way, is his boyfriend. not related to Ike of Ike's Place. Though they're both very nice guys. That morning, Bill awoke to find himself embraced, Ike's arms draped around him from behind, closer than fried oysters and French bread in a po' boy. Or maybe they'd melded into a single being, bound somehow on the cellular level. In the past, when he'd heard silly songs on the radio about love transforming two people into one, he'd roll his eyes at the absurdity. And yet, it had happened, just like the love song said. How could you hide something like that? He'd never come out of work before because he'd never had a good reason. He wondered if he should march into the office right now and tell everyone. Or perhaps he'd wait until the next company party. He wouldn't avoid going like he usually did. He'd bring Ike with him. After all, Ike was now the most important thing in his life. How could he not share that or act like it didn't exist? Bill looked over to Dorothy, still puffing and standing sentry. She must be lonely. She didn't have an Ike. That's why she acted the way she did. If she knew Bill was gay, he figured, she'd have to stop pursuing him. Bill got out of the SUV and made his way to the entrance. "Hello, handsome," Dorothy said, her voice raspy like a lounge singer. "Dorothy, I have something important to tell you. I lose something in your car?" "What?" "It looked like you were searching for something. I thought you'd never come over here and ravage me with your southern charms." I was just..." Bill tried to regroup. This was going to be more difficult than he thought. "I got to tell you a funny story. I'd love to hear, but it's about this guy I've been seeing," Dorothy continued. "Get this. We only have sex if I cook him dinner. And I noticed that if I cook Italian, then I get the oral." Huh? Bill's eyes instinctively glanced at Dorothy's fupa. "I'm telling you, Bill, I've made lasagna every night for the past 2 weeks." Bill shut his eyes to somehow block out the conversation. But the vision of Dorothy's plump ricotta cheese thighs, spread wide, popped into his head. He saw her gorging on a plate of pasta while her labia pouted and then somehow mouted the word marinara. Bill stifled a gag. "Is that weird or what? I mean, if you're into that, then I'm sure it's pretty normal. It's just the first I've heard of a guy getting turned on that way. You know, Bill, I also make a mouth-watering sausage and peppers if you'd like to come over some night." Jesus. The alert beep on Bill's cell phone went off. "Look at that," Bill said as he desperately flipped open the receiver to study the text. "Reception needs me right away. Gotta run." Bill careened past Dorothy and raced up the stairs. As soon as he reached the floor, the receptionist called out, "You've got to call on line 1. Overseas. Says it's very urgent. Wouldn't leave a message and insisted on staying on hold." Bill unlocked his office door and grabbed the receiver. "Hello? Bill?" It was a woman's voice. It sounded foreign and vaguely familiar. "Yes? Who is this?" We'll leave it at that. Thank you, everyone.